We are ready. Ready to start this final presentation of the work we have done during this last edition of our Final Synthesis course, studio-based course. Is that right? We tried this year with a very complex streaming, real-time streaming platform, and yeah, actually it's difficult. So let's go directly into the agenda of the day, of the afternoon, actually. This is what we will go through the afternoon, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paolo Ciuccarelli, for those who don't know me, and for the audience behind the camera. And I had the honor to coordinate this fantastic course. And this is the agenda for the final presentation of the results. Now, with a few minutes delay, yeah, 15 minutes delay at the academic quarter, it still exists, probably. So it's 15 minutes late. We will start with a very short introduction, my side. Actually, it would be a short, long introduction to the guest talk. So I will try to argument why it connects with the topics of our course. And after that, I will take the floor again for a very short introduction on what was the assignment basically for the students. So that's, and we'll go through the 3 different phases very shortly so that you don't have to spend time in explaining those 3 phases. So we'll do part of the work for you, and then you will actually present your work. You know the order, I think, or there are 2 different groups, so you can go quick, 15, 20 minutes, I think. I don't remember exactly the minutes you have, but you know that. Then we'll make a break, and we move to the ground floor, where there is the exhibition opening, the exhibition about info poetry, this strange exercise we invented some years ago in order to try to push data towards a more general public. And then after the opening, refreshments. So we will have an aperitivo. It's, I think, something we couldn't skip. And then, you know, we can celebrate together the end of the course and the beginning of what will come after. Hopefully together again. So I'll try to stay in my position. Some social indications. So this is the Twitter handle for DensityDesign, and I have to do that. That's my role. I'm the social media manager for DensityDesign so far. This is the hashtag of the event, and that's the link for the streaming. For if you want to send the link to someone to follow remotely the event. So this 12 minutes, and as some of you may know, as I would not be here for the next edition of the lab, you may forgive me if I've fallen into a kind of a nostalgic path. But I want to start this introduction very briefly, going back, using our digital methods to go back to the roots of density design. And again, this is to connect with Paul García after. And what I found with our time machine, the Internet Archive Wayback Machine, is the very first slide of density ever. This is the first slide we produced in 2004, 2005, for the first time to introduce students to the challenge that was, I think, very clear at that moment: communication and complexity. These were the 2 keywords, and that was the title of the course. 14, 15 years ago. That's a long time. And thanks to the Wayback Machine, I have also the first website of Density Design, 2004, 30 October. And you may guess, I mean, this is one of the posts from Donato Ricci, is about philosophy and complexity. And that's, you know, it's very important, I think, to remember where we started. We started, of course, from communication design, and we started from this philosophical idea of complexity. And it's funny that in 2005, January, we could find some of the first experiments with images in Google. So something that you played with 14 years after, and Gabriele should know something about it. The first experiment with extracting Google images and playing with that. And that's the very first class of students. Some of you may recognize professors among them and some very important publishers in the design sphere. So these are the first students that we challenged with this idea of communication and complexity. And some of you may recognize also some of the first teaching assistants. I mean, this is Donato Ricci, I think a very important person in our history. And step by step, we moved, I think, into what should be today your first and guiding idea. So it was still, this is 2009. We changed the logo, a bit more refined. The first one was done by me, so you can imagine. That's something that I think Donato did, or I don't remember exactly who. But it was still about communication design, of course. It was a Final Synthesis Studio in communication design and complexity, but we started introducing something more. So to give a goal to this idea of communicating complexity. And this is, by the way, the first another iteration of the website, and this is the first time we went into Twitter. this was our Twitter manifesto. 2009, thanks to Gaia Scagnetti, that is now teaching at Pratt Institute in New York City. She wrote our Twitter manifesto, actually. So this is something that we could try to follow even today. And then the website, as you know today, this is from 2009, I think, 2009, 2010. I think it's a website that resists 10 years. I think it's a good website, right? But still, the main focus was again on visual representation of complexity. So communication design, complexity, something, with this idea of making complexity visible and understandable. That's the very last version of the website, just a change in the name, because nobody recognized that Density Design is research lab. I think we are an agency, but a studio. And it's all about communication design. As I said, since the beginning, it was about communication design and complexity. Even when we met someone very important in our path, Latour, the actor network theory, so we went in a way more into society. Still, we were pretty much, focused on communication and complexity. We discovered that most of these complex issues are controversial. We discovered this idea of black box issues, but still the goal was to, hack the black box and make things visible. So to create this publicly inspectable space visually to enter the complexity of the issues to publicly inspectable visual. So it was, again, communication and complexity. Actually, we discovered that it was a job for us, that was our task to make these things visible, the complexity of contemporary social issues. So it was a call to action, but still around representation. So let's try to make, using the tool of communication design, to observe these issues, to represent these issues, and to make these issues as much as possible visible to the public. That has been always the goal. And even when we made another step farther into society through the work of Di Salvo that some of you are working on in their PhD and master thesis, again, it was a step towards society, but still pretty much focused on communication design, on representation, graphic design, information design, to trace issues and to make the conditions and the consequences of these issues visible. Again, communication design, visualization, make things visible, complexity. That has been pretty much always a focus, of revealing, exposing, underlying. All of that has to do with communication, visualization, make things visible, etc. And I still think that's very important. We live, I think, in a kind of a paradoxical situation where we are investing, not we, I mean, people outside, a lot of money in technologies. Actually, 2018, 65 billion have been invested in big data technology, machine learning algorithms. And of course, this is very important because these technologies are much more closer to complexity than the technology we had before. So that's very important. So we are now, thanks to these technologies, much more close to the uncertainty, the variability, the connectedness of social issues. We have that. But the paradox is that if these technologies are able to extract the complexity, there is nothing on the level of communication, visualization that can serve, give this complexity in the hands of all the stakeholders. So there is a lot of work to be done still on the level of visualization and representation. We have the technologies to have the data that in a much more coherent way represent complexity, but we don't have the means in terms of communication design, visualization, and representation to give this complexity, to put this complexity in the hands of all the stakeholders. But yet, this is not the point, I think. This is a very important goal. We have a lot of work to be done yet, but I think that we have to go more towards society. And I go back to another of the very first references that in 2004, I clearly remember that, pushed us in starting what you have done today, this year. This is a very important reference, is sometimes, I think, forgotten. It's Bruce Mau. He's a designer. He works in Canada. And he had a very clear idea of complexity on its own. But at the same time, he has also a very clear idea what design should do on complexity. And it's not only representation, it's not only understanding and learning, is having an impact. This is the book I bought in 2004, and it was a very important reference at that time. I think that we lost a bit this track in the 14, 15 years of work, and we are not that much, not enough working on that. How the visualizations, the artifacts we produce can change, can have an impact, can change society. I think that's part of the role of designers. It's inevitable. But I think we have to make some progresses on that. So that's my hope for the future, that we will go more and more into making use of these visualizations, these representations, these artifacts to change things. And it's difficult. I mean, designing the world in a way, it's of course, it's a very difficult challenge. But I mean, in the work of Bruce Mau, there was 15 years ago, there were some evidences of things that we have now practicing, for example, through info poetry. But that's very similar to what Paolo, García, and domestic data streamers do, I think. This idea of bringing data to the public and having an impact. And also some of the words in the manifesto of Bruce Mau 15 years ago, I think, go in this direction. So, and you can recognize some of the activities we have done. I mean, make your own tools, take field trips, power to the people, laugh, maybe, not enough. But that's something that I think, should keep in mind more. And that's why when we gave a subtitle to our course, it both contained and contains, the understanding, the visualization component, the representation component, the learning activity, and action. I think this action is something that we should work more. And this is something that I think very clearly connects to what domestic data streamers do. And so I want to thank you, Paolo, García, for being here to, I think, also talk about how to trigger change, if this is true, in your website. So that's, in my opinion, the important component that we share. So how can we, that's a question for you, to leave you the floor. So how can we really trigger changes, make a change, working with data through the competencies and the tool of communication design? I think there are no clear answers, but I hope you can help us shaping the answer together. So I'm very honored to have him. We use domestic data streamers as a reference since years. So I'm really happy that finally we succeeded in bringing Paul García and domestic data streamers here. So thank you, and the floor is yours. Is that you? Is that okay? But I have a that's a more serious presentation.
Thank you, Paolo, for inviting us. And we have been for a very long time followers of Density Design, so it's like a pleasure and an honor to be here today to present a bit of our work and our philosophy. Um, I will explain very briefly how we started, and then I will go straight to like some points and examples that I think are important to the way we look at information and data design. We started 5 years ago. We were four friends from different disciplines, from interactive design, code, graphic design, creativity in terms of more advertising, and architecture, right? And from that, we started like testing and working on the cultural environment, museums mainly, until we started seeing like how companies were approaching to us and even institutions. So the team in these 5 years has grown a bit, and now we are 28 people, from anthropologists, researchers from all fields, engineers, and all kind of designers, right? Mm, this is our office in Barcelona. And yeah, well, I will go like back to one thing that I discovered a while ago. I think it was like 6 months ago. I was trying to figure out how important our data is data today. For doing so, I went to Google Trends, right, and I searched for the word data, and there you can see like the amount of times people have looked up for the word data on Google, and this can give you like some kind of the importance of it, and you can see like some patterns, as you will be able to see in here. So there are some peaks and some repetitive. These are like 5 years searchers, and you can see how every December something goes down, but it's more or less like quite frequent, quite stable, the curve. But again, to see if data was important to humanity, I had to compare it to another word, and I wanted to compare it to a word that was really important to humanity. And so I wrote fuck on Google, right? And that's what happened. I was very surprised because it's quite similar. Like more or less, the people search the same amount of times fuck than data. And in December, fuck goes up, data goes down. Something happens in Christmas with data. That's something for you to explore. I will not go further on that, but yeah, there is a hint of something weird happening on the internet with data. And you can explore more. Sadly, in Spain, for every two data, there is only one fuck. And yeah, in Canada, there are a lot of fuck. Yeah, Algeria too, or Saudi Arabia. Like, yeah, there are like some very like hot countries, and others are more like into data. Italy is quite into data too. I don't know if that's good or bad. Okay, but again, if you like look at data from another point of view, and you look for images on Google, in blue futuristic images, right? Star Trek codes, data, weird abstract stuff, right? Things that you are not really able to understand, something like, but not really relatable to humans. And at the end, data is something like really connected to humanity. And if we look at it, it's facts and statistics collected together for reference or analysis. That means, again, from the point of view of the definition of data, it says that we started doing was trying to define data from with different, right? And we went to the basis of data, or how we wanted to look at it, and we went to the numbers, the figures, and somehow we went to this one, the symbol, right? One reality, one thing. It can define other, right? It can define this situation, like this political context, a victim, a murderer, a weapon, and we are able to like symbolize all the situation, all the emotions, everything in this situation into one symbol, right? And we do so to like analyze and quantify more complex situations that we can collect together. And by doing so, by creating these symbols that represent the same situation somehow again and again in quantities, what happens is that we kind of forget about the images, about the names and surnames, about the realities and the emotions that are hidden behind these realities, right? So we always say that data by itself tends to detach the emotions, right? Because they only show one part of it, a representation, a symbol that represents a much more deeper reality on it. Um, but are emotions so important for data, right? And a good example is what happened at in the United States, right? Donald Trump won the elections, and that was a bit of a surprise for everyone. Not Vladimir Putin, but the rest of the world was like really surprised. And and I saw an interview at the CNN that was they were like kind of arguing advisor funds and during the campaign. You said that during the Obama years, the crime in America was getting worse, right? And they show this statistic. They show like how during the Obama years it went from 459 crimes for 100,000 people to 373, right? So it was lower. And and the guy that was really smart said, no, 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 we were not talking about the reality of crimes. We were talking about the perception of it, right? And the fact is that today people perceive America as a more dangerous place, right? So he drew this new line and he said, this is the important data, not the reality, what people perceive as a reality, right? And I really love this vignette from the New York Times. It's a kind of contest that says facts don't matter. And the anchorman says, I'm sorry, Jenny, your answer was correct, but Kevin shouted his incorrect answer over yours, so he gets the points. And this is a very nice way to put the reality and how we perceive reality today. It's sometimes it's not any more important to have the facts, but to have a way to explain it in a compelling emotional way, right? There is Louis Reard that said on the 40s, today when people go to elections and referendums, you're not asked what do you think, but what do you feel. That's one of the main dangers of democracy, understanding that the critical mass that votes is moved by emotions, and these are easily manipulated by people, right? That's exactly what happened in the States. And it's exactly what happens or what not happens when we see the news, right? And you may be having lunch and eating some macaroni, some pasta, and unexpectedly on the television they say, hey, there has been 400 people found dead on the Mediterranean Sea, right? And you see that, but you can keep eating, right? Because it's just a number, and almost every week we have a news like this. So yeah, I doesn't care anymore. Or the cost of corruption in Europe, up to 990 billion lost annually. What does it mean? Like, I really don't. Our brains are not wired to understand this relation of concepts and quantities. So we don't care, right? And we can see like this lack of empathy in everyday objects. Like I love this one because it's a very good example. It's an object, is a pregnancy test. It's something that can change your life forever, and it has been here from the 70s. And this object that in one moment can change everything you have for yourself in the future. The way we explain this change in your life is just with two fucking lines, right? We just visualize this huge change with two lines when we could actually do something much more empathetic. We could find opportunities to connect with people in a much deeper way. Um, so again, when we started working on data, we were kind of exploring which tools do we had to create emotions, and we were a bit disappointed at the beginning because we saw how we were using the same tools as the 18th century. and with the only difference that we could use it in a digital environment, so it could become liquid, right? They could move. But still, they were the same tools, and it's obvious that the world has changed since the 18th century, and specifically in terms of the amount of information that we are exposed today and the way we are interconnected globally. So we have to be exposed, and we have to be able to understand much more bigger figures, much more bigger realities. And with these tools, sometimes it's not enough, right? And what happens with this is that we create a huge lack of empathy. And you can see that on the way we use digital tools like Facebook, right? Or Twitter, that you see a video of your friend having an amazing weekend, and then you see a picture of a cat, and then you see that, I don't know, 20 people have been found dead in Nepal. And then you see another video of a cat. And they are all placed in the same wall, and you can scroll through them in the same way, and they have the same hierarchy, right? And just by creating tools that enable these situations, we are kind of disconnecting the people to the importance, to the humanity of these realities, right? And the lack of empathy is not so dangerous. It's actually a thing that can happen, but what cannot happen is what comes with it, that is a lack of action. That is, if we don't feel attached to something, if we don't feel emotions towards our reality, we will not change it, right? We will just look at it, stay. Like a window is something that happens outside my territory, I don't care. I can just stare at it, right? It doesn't affect me, but it really does, because you cannot scroll your family, you cannot scroll your work, you cannot scroll your wall, right? And that's the thing that we believe it has to be fight and fought. So there is this guy, García, that this is one of our heroes. This guy spent like 30 years of his life studying and doing research on science. And he says this, I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. What he's saying here is, okay, we have the tools to change the world, but in order to change it, we need a cultural change, not a technological one. It's not anymore about the tools, but about the mindsets of people. And to move those, we need not scientific, not technological tools. We need cultural and spiritual tools, right? And communication have a lot to do with this. The way we create emotions towards scientific realities, right? And one example is this. Climate change alerts have been ringing for the past 50 years, and still the President of the United States says this is a hoax and that this doesn't exist. And I saw a Kickstarter that I think is a very good example of how you can create emotions when the science itself, when the data itself is not enough. And I just wanted to share with you.
Well, I'm not a big believer in man-made climate change. It goes up, it goes down. We'll see what happens.
Speaking of global warming, we need some global warming. The United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord. Every president on Mount Rushmore believed in protecting American industry. I'd ask whether or not you think I will someday be on Mount Rushmore.
So this is not a visualization itself, but it's a kind of actually it is a visualization of the ego of Donald Trump, right? And they want to actually make it melt in front of him. And this is just a way to like bridge these two realities, right? One reality that is obvious and a political reality that goes over it, right? So that's why we always try to convey that data visualization have to be like really rational and have a very scientific approach and double check every fact that you explain. But at the same time, you really have to focus on the emotions, on the way you will explain this information, how you will get to the people, right? How this information can actually trigger change, because otherwise it really doesn't matter, because if you are not able to get to the people, then the information just ends up in a place where no one is going to read it, right? Um, Another big quote, this time from Joseph Stalin, was "One death is a tragedy, a million deaths is just a statistic." He was quite an expert on killing people, so he knew about what he was talking about. And I was really annoyed by this quote until I went to Poland. It was 8 years ago, and I saw something that was kind of challenging this quote, right? And it was in Birkenau at the concentration camp of Auschwitz. And it's kind of a dark tourism thing. You can go there and visit the place. It's quite well kept, everything. You can see like everything as it was. They don't have reconstruct anything. They just left the stuff as it as the Russians found it. And it's kind of very oppressive atmosphere, and you can feel like actually it's the only place where I have been that I have seen like hundreds of children, of kids, just in total silence, right? Because the oppression of the place and the respect that you can see, because the terrible things that happened there. But there was one room that really kind of attract me because the impact it had, and it was a room full of glass and was filled up with with I don't know, thousands of hairs of the last victims, right? And the Germans were like taking all this hair to make military dresses. It was part of kind of an industry. And when you stare in front of all this hair, you forget about all the numbers. You forget about the history lessons. You forget about the films. You forget about the books. And somehow you connect in a much more deeper human way to these numbers, right? It's like material numbers in front of you. And you don't have to like find these kind of very dramatic events to like look for examples like this. This is Pantà de Sau, that is like a lake that I used to pass by when I was a kid, and I was going to Barcelona from my village with my parents. And every time I passed by, I used to take my head out of the window to look at the lake, because you can read the weather forecast. And normally when you think about like reading the weather, you think about these maps, right, more or less. And but for a kid of 4 or 5 years, that was nothing. I couldn't read these things. It was not interesting to me. But what was interesting was like the small church that is in the middle of the lake, and depending on the moment of the year and depending on the rains, it appears and disappears, right? And it was kind of working as an infographic for me. It was a very simplistic way to explain what was happening there, and it was attracting me to understand the realities behind this event, right? And again, I could connect this to Richard Solwerman when he says that we can only truly understand something when we are able to connect to something we already understand, right? And this is like the basis of using metaphors to explain things. And on that idea, we started working on specific projects. One of the first projects we did was for the Contemporary Art Center in Barcelona. And the curators came to us and said, okay, we have a problem. We are doing an exhibition that is going to be first in Barcelona, Madrid, then London and Singapore. And obviously after each exhibition, we have some feedback, but we have qualitative data. Another curator comes and explains what they think. Other people tell us that maybe this artwork should be at the end. We have qualitative data, but not quantitative data. And the briefing was like this: how we actually take quantitative data about the impact of artwork towards the audience, right, during 7 months. And obviously, art is a very subjective thing, so you cannot quantify the impact of it. But what we started actually quantifying was the time that the people was spending in front of the different artworks. And we placed sensors all over the place and started tracking the amount of time that the people was spending in front of one artwork or the other. That was 2014. And it was interesting. We had a lot of information, and we could actually share that with the museum and the curators and say, okay, this is the data. You can actually change the exhibition in that way, right? But we thought, okay, this is interesting, but what will be interesting is to see how, by visualizing this information, we could actually change the way the public, the audience, is behaving in this exhibition, right? So what we did was taking all this data in real time and transform it into something physical. We designed 5 clocks, sun clocks, that for every second someone was looking one artwork, it was leaving a trace of sand, right? So you could see like these 5 sand mountains, visualizing the impact of 5 different artworks on people. And was really crazy how the people get to. This was at the very end of the exhibition, and when they get here and saw the 5 sun clocks, they came back to see these 5 artworks again, because they saw why there is one artwork that is more seen than the others, right? And we were somehow kind of hacking the way people were seeing. We were creating an analytics of the exhibition, and the people wanted to see the exhibition again, but with this new information. And there was one day I was just visiting with my family there, and I passed by and I saw a guy looking at one of the artworks. And after like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I went back with some friends to see the exhibition again. And the same guy was there, still watching one of the artworks. And I asked him, "What are you doing, man? Are you all right? Is everything good with you?" And he told me, "Yes, yes, I'm actually good. But the thing is that I really like this artwork, and no one is looking at him. So I really want to invest my time in it. Right? I want to give my time." And that was like really meaningful, because we discovered how, just by visualizing something that was already there but was invisible, where we were kind of humanizing an object, an artwork. And even the people were treating this object in a new way, or changing the relation between the object, this artwork, and the people and the audience, right? And examples of the relation between data and people is something that we have been trying to explore. These 2 guys, we met them in Venice Beach in California, and there was a huge queue of people um, that wanted to give them money, but they were not actually asking for money. They were asking which religion cares most about the homeless, and the people wanted to answer, right? And you had Jedi, pagan, Jewish, 420, that is like the marijuana chain over there, spiritual, Hindu. And what we discovered there is that people is not really used to be asked something publicly on the street. And in some spaces, obviously, there are some countries that they're not really open to this kind of interactions. But in Western cultures, the people is really open to these kind of interactions, right? And just by making people participate, you are making them be more aware of the rest of the information, because unexpectedly they see themselves in the infographic. They see themselves as part of this data, right? And it starts to be important to them. So we always say that we systematically overestimate the value of access to information, underestimate the value of access to each other, right? Um, that's why we always try to connect data to people in different ways, but always in a more human and emotional way. And this is the first project we did. Somehow, how we discovered that we could actually work on the streets with information in a much like experiential way. And we did the first project in Tres Xemeneies, that is a square in Barcelona, that is very interesting from the social point of view, because there is a clash of different people. There are like the blocks, and there is a luxury hotel, there is a public and a private school, there is one of the most famous clubs in Barcelona in the night, and also is a hotspot for tourists. So you can see like all kind of people like passing by this street. And in this street, there are like these 3 walls that has been always been used as a graffiti hotspot, right? And we were invited to a graffiti contest, because we used to paint graffiti. And we said, okay, what if we do a graffiti that is not talking about ourselves or is not an illustration, but is something that is talking about the people. It's something that talks about all the people that pass by this square. So what we did was exactly this. We created the mood test that was a kind of timeline that every person that happens to pass by this wall, we ask, hey, how do you feel? You feel optimistic or pessimistic? And then we ask other information, like for example, and the amount of um, tap waters they have in their home and the amount of windows they have in their home. We ask these two very weird things because you can cross this data and know the economical status of people in Barcelona, right? There is a correlation between these two things and the amount of money that you have on the bank. And we have this hypothesis that the rich people will be more optimistic towards the future. And the result was that they are not, actually, they are more pessimistic. And we discovered other stuff like the grannies on the morning are quite more positive. And as the time goes, they start to feel more pessimistic. So you better don't go on the afternoon to talk to grannies. We talked to all kind of people. And after a while, we discovered that we were kind of getting like really as the people were looking at us as part of the furniture, as the public furniture of the square, and they were starting to really move along us. And let's see if and something that was really crazy is that the day after this experiment, we went back there to take some pictures, and we saw a mother that was going there with her two daughters, and one of them went running to the wall and said, "Hey, mom, this circle over here, this is me," right? And at that point, we discovered that they were having ownership about this information. They were seeing this as a kind of mirror of all the people. And I think this is one of the powers of involving people in the creation of information and data visualization, right? So going back to more commercial projects that we do, after a while we started being asked for private companies to use like our knowledge and applied it to more commercial ways, right? And we give it a try. And we were always working with kind of R&D departments, so they were really open to explore things. And one of these companies was Nike, and they told us to design a shoe, and we told them that we were not like shoe designers. So they said, okay, then help us. We have a problem with the website, and maybe you can like figure out what is going on. And we started looking at the data, at the statistics, and how people use this website. This is the Nike ID website where you can actually design your own shoes. It's a personalized website. It's a web for personalization of shoes, and this is a very strategic thing for Nike because they have seen that personalization is something really important for them, for their industry. But unexpectedly on the data, you could see how most of the people were not personalizing their shoes. They were just selecting shoes from other people that have been designed before. And they said, okay, what's going on? Why the people is not like creating their own things? And we spent like really 2 months doing interviews with people about their shoes. It was like really weird. And and we learned about shoes, and we learned about the really weird things that people does with shoes. And also we discovered kind of a sense of belonging index that is this over here, right? So there is a moment where you buy the shoe and you are like really excited about it, but you still don't feel that these shoes are yours, right? It's by the use of it, by the experience, by going up to the mountain or going to a club or spending one summer with the shoes, that they start to accommodate to you and they're starting being yours, and the people identify you with the shoes, right? And after a while the shoes broke, or they have a stain, or something happened to the shoes, and you have new shoes, so you stop using them, and little by little they get apart until they get to the closet. And when they get to the closet, they spend there from 2 years to 8 years, and some people they kept them forever, but most of the people after 8 years they have to take it back to the rubbish because they have to fill the closet with other stuff. And everyone we interviewed, everyone, not one exception, said, okay, probably the most emotional moment I have had with my shoes was the last one, was the moment where I had to kill the shoe. Because I was not killing the shoe, I was killing all the experiences that I had lived. And experience of my life, or a moment, an epoch of my life that I could identify myself with. And I said, okay, how we could actually trigger all this empathy and all these kind of emotions towards the very first moment. And they said, okay, what should we do now with the website? And we created a new website that was actually creating your own infographic with your shoes. So depending on what you answered, they were asking for a challenge first. What you want to do? I want to do a marathon, right? And depending on that, you were selecting one model or the other. You and yourself, or you with another friend, that was painting the place where you put your feet, where the geolocation, depending on where you wanted to be, it was changing the place of the shoe, the part of the shoe that is in contact with the floor, then the when, the deadline, something that is always behind us, the time, the motions, and the laces were the why. Why are you doing this? And with this, we were making this experiment that at the end was creating a shoe that when someone say, hey, nice shoes, you were not saying, yes, I have a style. You were saying, yes, I want to do that, right? And it was something that you could really identify with, because it was something that was talking about your future experiences. And this idea of Nike of just do it was part of the product itself and the way we were designing a product, right? And after a while, we started working from even more commercial brands, that it was very weird for us because we were really used to work with museum and cultural institutions or public institutions. And obviously their goals is to sell more, right? And we were not really focusing on that. We had a very philosophical and political idea behind the work we were doing with information. So when Beefeater, that is this very standard mainstream jean, came to us to ask for help in a strategy campaign for 6 months. We said, okay, we will do that, but half of the budget will be invested in making an ethnographic report about how the people in Spain live the festivals and experience the festivals, right? And we will share this publicly with the schools, with the universities, and with the festivals. This won't be held by the company, but will be publicly. And they say, okay, let's do that. We will invest half of the budget of communication in understanding more people, right? And what we do was a campaign that was called I Stand For. And this claim comes from the Beefeater logo, that is like this kind of soldier that stands for the Queen of England. And we said, okay, instead of Beefeater just talking to the people and saying their own shit about buy us, we are the best gene in the world, let's ask the people what they stand for, what they defend. And so this is what we did. This is a very commercial case study that we used to explain the people from Beefeater afterwards, all the work.
You miss me? I miss all of y'all. All y'all girls standing together like that. I can't take it.
Music festivals, magical places in which even if you're knee-deep in mud and slipping in a tent that's far from comfortable, you're still able to have the time of your life. Music is just one of the reasons to go to music festival. People want to live an experience. Beefeater Spain wanted to be part of the party, but this time for real. We chose 2 top Spanish festivals, Bebica Live and Mac Cool, and decided that instead of giving information, we wanted to listen. We put the festival goers at the center of our world. For this, we made use of our own Beefeater London attitude, bold, cheeky, and genuine to show what we stand for. That's exactly how we named the campaign, I Stand For, a tool for festival goers to express themselves. Now, going to a festival requires some sort of organization, and we saw how people didn't have a platform in which to schedule the most important thing, when the artists were playing. We made a web app that asked questions about life in general and festival life in particular, and that created a perfect lineup for the festival goers. They seem to like it. We got 23,000 unique users, 15,000 of them registered, and 1,242,000 answers in total. Now that's more questions than a 4-year-old asks in a day. We went viral on all the social media channels, Playground, YouTube, Instagram, and yes, Tinder. These platforms made the I stand for word reach way further than expected, because seriously, nearly 5 million clicks without even showing some flesh? Amazing. We made a 360 campaign out of I stand for. It all followed the same mood, share the vibe, the hashtag, and the concept direction, because sharing is caring and we care about making it memorable. Boom. And after the tea stage, it was the time for the real deal. To keep up with the questions and knowing about the festival goers, we set up 2 question asking doors collecting information through Kinect technology. They were placed in natural pathways and presented vital choices that collected more than 74,000 interactions. Because you have to know if someone prefers Gandalf to Dumbledore. You so do. To make things even better, we had data collecting men that gathered answers in exchange of high fives. These were the almighty data walkers, and they high-fived more than 26,000 times with the festival goers. Now that's interacting with a passion. We needed
The main idea was to use the money of Beefeater to actually give tools to the people, right? So, for example, we said, okay, instead of placing your logo in a big screen on the festival, what we will invest this money is in actually making something that the people need. And we discovered that in the 2 festivals, they didn't have a way to organize their agenda, and they didn't know how to like see all the artists that were playing. So we said, okay, invest in that. The people will use it. It will be something really good for the people going there. And the main idea behind these concepts is to switch from this wall of advertising where the thing that they want is to just place their logo everywhere, to create actually function with all this money, right? And for example, when we collected all this information, even the BBK, that is one of the biggest festivals, told us, okay, we have a problem. Arctic Monkeys is playing here in 20 minutes, and we don't know how many people is going to come. Can you share with us this information? And we said, okay, we can actually arrange a video on all the screens of the festival, so the people will know that the 99% of the people will come to this part of the festival. And then it's how we started like creating like real function from all this information. This more or less how we always try to mix on the specific context. So for example, if we were on a festival, we're thinking, okay, let's not stop people to ask things. Let's use the flows of the people to really understand how they think, right? And let's use the same materials and the same style that the festival uses by themselves, right? And like the questions, some of them were really nice. Like for example, this one was, I'm searching for the love of this night, or I'm searching for the love of my life. And you could see like a lot of people just waiting in the other part of the door, just staring and seeing who was going for one or the other. So again, it was changing there, right? And the same happened with the data walkers. We were using something that happens already in the festivals, that are these guys that sell beer. We were using the same system, but to collect information, right? Um, and what we did there was bringing like 5 anthropologists in each festival to actually make interviews and collect information, like more qualitative information. And with it, we made the Red Book of festivals. That was a book to actually change how brands interact with festivals and start explaining the spaces that really needs people to invest money to make these experiences much better. And that's one way of actually using commercial brands and that have a lot of money to actually bring value to different parts, right? And this is the last project I will show you today, because I think I'm running out of time. Okay, 5 minutes. This is, I think, was Confucius who said that first, and, and said, "I hear and I forget, I see and I remember." And I read that at the book Paradigms of Interactivity, and it was really meaningful. And this is something that we have always tried to do with the way we visualize information, make information something you can actually do, or you can trigger, or you can be part of, right? And with it, a good example of how we do it was a project that we did with UNICEF at the United Nations General Assembly 2 years ago. And we were talking at the New York Times about data journalism and how we could actually trigger more empathy to people. And there we met with the data division of UNICEF. And they told us a lot of problems that they had, but one of the biggest ones were that in a lot of sub-Saharan countries, they don't have any information about childhood, right? They don't have any information about education, about health, and this is a big problem, right? Because during the General Assembly in the United Nations in New York, 371 leaders come together and decide like the future of 7 billion people, right? And in 2016 was specifically a very important General Assembly because they were deciding the Sustainable Development Goals with specific targets for each country in the world. And that was all based in statistics, right? And they have their own data and they could back up their proposals of how each country was going to improve some parts of the problems they had using and backing up with data. But again, when they asked these sub-Saharan countries, how was the health and childhood in their country, they say, we don't know. So there is no data, there is no problem, right? And UNICEF said, okay, this is the biggest problem of all, because if we don't know what is going on there, this means that it may be worse than we think, right? And with that, they asked us, okay, how we can actually make data visualization about the data that doesn't exist for the 371 most powerful political leaders in the world, Obama, Ban Ki-moon, and all these people. And at that point, again, we were like half of the studio that we are like based on Barcelona, working only for like not political institutions. And we were a bit scared of going to New York to do a project for Obama and Ban Ki-moon and these guys. And we said, okay, this is so surrealistic that we have been asked to do this project that we have to come up with a surrealistic approach. And we said, okay, we have to make a time machine, right? We have to make a time machine to make these leaders go back to their childhood and understand the importance of their own data, right? And specific facts about their childhood. And obviously, when we say that to the president of UNICEF, that it is an ex-CIA agent, very conservative, he said, there is no fucking way that you're gonna place a time machine at the United Nations General Assembly in our name. But then, and he told us, you have 24 hours to convince me. And then in 24 hours, we put up this video to try to convince this guy.
For a long time, humans have been grappling with the idea of time travel. The goal of traveling to the past or the future has always challenged mankind to push the boundaries of technology and science. For the first time now, we have managed to create the technology that enables it. Today we present the world's first working time machine, the only machine that allows you to travel to the present, the most important time we face. A machine activated through your heartbeat that will take you through a journey, asking questions about your childhood, your fears, memories, and dreams. A machine that enables you to be a child again. The time machine will transform all your childhood information into the song of your commitment, a song specifically made for you. All the songs created will form part of the commitment playlist, an album where there will be as many variations of it as there are childhoods. The machine will print a personalized commitment contract between yourself and yourself as a child. This contract will be part of the first commitment contract exhibition, an exhibition that will publicly show people's promises to better the future for children worldwide.
So after watching this video, he said, yes, okay, let's build a time machine. And we built this very futuristic kind of cabin made of mirrors. You can see here, it was placed at the hall of the United Nations in New York, just before entering to the big hall room. And we got to be appointed to 220 of the political leaders going into the General Assembly, and we had between 8 and 12 minutes in their agendas during different days, right? So we had to create a whole experience that could be about this time. And obviously the first thing we had to do was to create something that they were isolated, right? Because we didn't want this thing to be a circus for politics, but something really meaningful for them. So we wanted the journalists to be out of the experience. We wanted no security. We wanted no one there, no advisors, only one person that had to take decisions, right? And in this cabin, you could enter one. It could also only enter one person, and it was totally isolated, soundproof. And when you got inside, you were in total darkness with just one point of light. And this point of light was kind of talking to you. It was reacting to the voice. And there was this voice that was guiding you through the experience and was asking you questions, right? And one of the first things that he asked you is to place your hand in this lead surface. And with this, we were actually taking your heartbeat. We were transforming your heartbeat into the tempo of a song. And then with every question we asked to the people, a new instrument, a new sound were coming to a specific song made for you, right? So for example, we were asking, which was your first love, right? To Obama. Obama said, Marie, right? He answered that. And we were actually using the time he waited until he answered, the time he had to thought of that, to use to play the instrument that long, right? And for example, we asked them which was what you wanted to be when you grow up, right? And he said, I wanted to be an astronaut. And you could hear in the song 3, 2, 1, ignition, right? And all these songs were like creating like this very personalized thing about your childhood. And there was one moment like of climax where you had like already all the instruments, and then it came to a total silence, and that voice that was guiding you said, okay, you have heard the sound of your childhood, but still today there are a lot of childhood that doesn't sound at all, right? And at that point, a contract was printed between yourself as a kid with all your data as a kid and yourself, Obama, as the president of the United States, and he had to sign it as a president, right? And it was a contract that was publicly showed as an exhibition, right, with all the other contracts from other politicians. And it was very weird to see like how Ban Ki-moon even was introducing the time machine at the United Nations. It was very surrealistic. I think even he was really surprised. He didn't know what was going on in there. And at the beginning, I thought that wasn't going to be like really something meaningful, right? And I thought when I saw all the cameras and everything, all the security, everything going around, this guy is from the Secret Service, as you can see here. It's like he has been into all the films of Matrix and all these things, and it's like yeah, cliche. But again, this is the moment where Ban Ki-moon went inside. You can see like how nervous was the people. This guy, look at this guy over here. He's smiling but nervously. It's like really something going bad. And we get to meet a lot of people. But again, after the whole experience, I felt a bit empty because I said, okay, this has been wonderful. All the people has enjoyed this experience. But is this going to change something? And because this experience was really memorable, was in the news in a lot of countries, but is this really going to change something? So what we did was in 2017, track all the political agendas for the next General Assembly, and we saw a 77% more of the term gaps of information in childhood, right? And still, even if this is one step ahead of making real change on countries, we saw how this became a thing to do in the agendas of politicians. So that was even a trigger. And still, this project was really small and was only impacting 220 people. The impact that it can have after these 220 people is like much bigger, right? And again, as Paolo was saying before, there is a lot of investment and talent in big data and the very technical aspects of research of what we can have behind this information. But there is not the same amount of space and investment in the way we are going to explain this information to the people. And this is really important because from the literature to arts to television and cinema to the most important contemporary events transcended for what they were, but for how they were explained to the people, right? So right now we believe that the data language is something that is really needed to explain the future, how we're living today, and how we will be able to change these situations. And we believe that today we have this blank page where we can build any new language that we want with information. And that's it, guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Paul, for this. We didn't speak each other before, but I think that our two presentations were, you know, so thank you for closing with this idea of triggering change, having an impact. I think, I really believe I share with you this idea that that's very important. I mean, if we don't have an impact, then. So let's move into the second phase of this afternoon. Now it's your time for students to present their work. Very briefly, what was the assignment? How we challenged students on understanding and acting within the complexity of our world through the means and the tools of communication design and data visualization. Actually, we went through 3 different phases. And these are the 3 phases that you actually have to summarize in some way into your presentation. So first, we asked students to explore the issue. We work with very crucial, important issues as migration and climate change and all these very important issues. And the exploration started from structured data. That was also kind of a training activity. Thanks also to Simone, introduction to statistics, and Jacopo, of course. And so it was also a way to start engaging with data, because data for some of you was a kind of a unknown material to play with. So we started with this training activity on structured data, also to understand what is the official representation of the phenomenon and the issue you was asked to explore. So you learned also some tools and methods, and that was the aim of the first phase. The result, we had 2 results, and then we will see hopefully these results, an infographics and a web page. So it was for some of you, it was the first time you saw this, raw materials, and then they have been transformed into visualizations. And it's also a way to, a first step into these are from the last year. I didn't put I didn't want to spoil the new ones. But we have also this interesting collaboration with La Lettura that hopefully will publish some of your works, as they did in the past. And I think this is very important. I mean, it's a way to have an impact. I mean, if some of your visualizations, they succeed in making data more digestible and understandable, we have a partner in this, in this path towards the engagement of a wider public. We can use a newspaper to try to have a first impact with our data. The second phase were more, it's more difficult normally. So it's you engaged with another type of material, so unstructured data, dinging the web. So you extracted, Sirens extracted all the data from the web mainly. So unstructured data through some scripts and activity, using some tools that have been learned in a kind of a collective way. And that's where complexity really starts to arise. I mean, it's complex also the way you relate with data. So the complexity in a way is reflected by the source itself. So you go in the web, you have to face the complexity of the source, and then this I think the output in that case is a web report. So it's a kind of a step back. So we don't normally, it's something that is not meant to spread data towards a wide public, but it's very important to have this first result as a summary of activity, where visualization actually is a research tool. So visualization has been used also to understand data as they were scraped from the web. The web was the main data set, and then it also became visualization part of the report to spread the results of the analysis. And finally, the third phase in the discourse we made, probably this is the most important. I mean, after we understood the official voices, I mean, the official picture of the phenomenon, then we tried to make our own version, our own picture of the phenomenon through the web, scraping new data. Then it's time to spread again this exploration with a wide public. And that's where the goal of the third phase is to engage with the public, having had these two levels of understanding of the issue and the phenomenon. So students are asked in a way to take a position to, after having seen different perspectives and different voices, you have to decide in a way where to stand. And after having taken this position, the request was to build an experience that could, make this position visible and understandable by a public. So the request was to build an experience, a web experience, even if some of the web experiences could also contain some physical experiences. So it's along the idea of advocating or pushing some perspectives on, and that's I think important, is playing a role that design should play. So having standing for something and then proposing this perspective to the public. In that case, again, the result is a web tool. So I think this is, and it's very important. I mean, that's something that is, I had a question for you, Paul, before, but we don't have time. But it's sometimes you have to do some projects, so it's not always obvious to take a position. I mean, sometimes you can't, so you have to, in a way, get the position of someone else. But that's, I think it's very important. It's part of the title of our course. So you are here, so make a decision. So that's the perspective I want to share, and that's what I want to say. I think it's very important. So the third phase is the one I like the most. I mean, it's something I really, it's quite coherent with the role we should have as communication designers. So take a stand, design an experience, and try to drive the public narration or the public perception of. I think these are three very important goals, and that makes, in my opinion, the last phase that we will see today, I think mainly one of the most important. Just for the records, these are the issue domains we had at the beginning. So very important, crucial, social phenomenon. So probably these are not the right ones. I'm sorry, but okay, this is, and it's something. I'm not sure these are the right ones. These are the right ones. Okay, sorry, I didn't have in memory everything. So these are the things that we challenge students with, but then of course you will see every group then articulated they work around very specific subtopics. So this was just a point of departure, and then every exploration went through a different direction. I think it's also interesting how every group, in a way, interpreted the issue on its own. So through the exploration, they got a different perspective, and I think this is a good mirror of the complexity of the phenomenon. So no more words from my side. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all the faculty, the staff, and that participated in this activity. So together with me, that, as I said, I had the honor to coordinate the activity. I want to thank you in a kind of a, I hope, rigorous alphabetical order, all the faculties. Sorry? Okay, I'll say that. So I hope they are all here. What is Stefano? Stefano is here. So thank you, Stefano, and for your work. Thank you, Michele. Where is Michele? He's here. And so 2 designers and then a statistician, Simone Vantini, and then Zingale Salvatore is not here. We spoke a lot about metaphors and language, and that's where semiotics is very important. So we had also the contribution from. So I think that's I think we should recognize the role of these professors, because I have the suspect that this lab is one of the most the closer experiences you can imagine to what is interdisciplinary education. So having design, semiotics, statistics, and a bit of coding together in one course, I think it's a very important experience, because that's what you will have, I think, in the future. And last but not least, thank you to the wonderful team of assistants. I think they played a big role in helping you, do your thing. I hope I didn't forget anyone, but and okay, you will see them probably in the future with more important roles, and that's my hope for them. And thank you to the students, because you did the job, and so thank you. That's an applause for you. So the first group should be ready. Is the first group ready for presenting? And just few words, don't forget what comes after. So you had the course, and I really hope that some of you will continue working on the same, maybe not the same issues, but the same idea of design. And so you have a couple of other chances to do that. That's the course. Then you have the internship. Hopefully you can continue doing this work in the internship and maybe the thesis. So you have a couple of other opportunities to, to dig more into that. So while the first group come here, don't forget that after the presentation, we have the opening of the exhibition downstairs about this idea of info poetry. And I think this has a lot to do with what we said before. Emotions, engagement, having an impact. This is what we try to do, especially with this as a form of public engagement, being as much as possible humans. I mean, when we present data. So good luck for the next edition, and the floor is for the students.
Va bene così? Ok, funziona. Va bene? Is it okay? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. We are Group 1, and we're going to present our project about hate speech against women. And the reason why we decided to focus on this part of hate speech is because often hate speech against women is treated as an harmless and non-serious issue. And women are often told to implicitly or explicitly bear with it. And this is only because our society is strongly based on a patriarchal set of mind. Usually, the aim of hate speech is the one to humiliate, destroy the reputation of women, silence them, objectify them, and criticize their role in society. As we can show you from the next slide, during our research, we discovered that 40% of women aged around 20 have experienced hate speech and insults during their lives. So this was a pretty hot topic for us to analyze and discuss. In the first phase, we tried to analyze and explore the general situation and the violences that women have reported thanks to data set we found from institutional resources. So this led us to two different outputs. The first one is a website that not only analyzes the different types of ordinary sexism and violences, both in the real world and on social media platforms, but also tries to understand the nature of the perpetrators of these violences and the psychological consequences that these violences, harassments have on women. Part of this research was then summarized in the analog output, the printed version, printed visualization, sorry, we create for La Lettura newspaper, in which we analyzed 6 countries' experiences, and we created this template, this combination to create a comparison between these 6 different places. All of these works led us to the second part of the project.
So, in the second part of our project, we asked ourselves the question, do we still need feminism? Exploring what exactly means to be a feminist and analyzing the debate around feminism itself. While researching, we went from sexism to feminism, mapping the controversies around these topics, using the web as a source of information, extracting various kinds of data, and trying to visualize them in the most effective ways. Let's look at the research roadmap of the website. When in the first protocols, we analyzed the top-down vision of feminism and the mainstream perspective of it. In the second part of the protocols, we explored the bottom-up voices in order to see what's really underneath the surface. So, to understand more about the history of feminism, we used Wikipedia to compare its 4 waves. In the visualization, each wave is represented by a tree map. Inside the tree map, it's possible to see the categories of the events, and the main ones appears when you click on a specific category. You can notice in the first wave a new category called online activism associated with the use of social media. When you click on this category, a sparkling visualization appears, showing the spreading of some campaigns online, like the famous Me Too, He for She, and Everyday Sexism. Another important protocol is about the orientation of the most viewed videos about feminism, and which are the reaction of the users who watch them. In the visualization, each video is represented by a circle. The color of the circle is represents the orientation of the video. Blue is for anti-feminists, red for feminists, and yellow for the neutral ones. The position in the graph depends on the number of the reaction on the y-axis and the number of comments on the x-axis. By clicking on the circles, you can also see some information. For example, the most viewed feminist videos has the 74% of likes, of these likes, while most of the anti-feminist videos has a lot of likes. The final results highlights that not only the anti-feminist videos are the larger category, but that they have the higher numbers of views, comments, reactions. Next, we treat MGTOW, the most famous community of anti-feminists. MGTOW stands for Men Going Their Own Way. So in order to do that, we analyzed their vocabulary and we extracted the word of the glossary section. We used Google search to identify the frequency of these terms. And this process leads us to do visualizations. In the first visualization, we can see a tag cloud with the 25 most frequent terms of the whole website. While in the second visualization, we can see a heat map indicating the most representative words for each forum. The more frequent, the brighter is the color. For example, in the monoforum section, the most representative word is husband, a neologism that means, I quote, a husband whose only expected purpose is to allow himself to be treated like an ATM, namely a bank machine. Another ironic result in the philosophy section is the high frequency of the word slut. And in the health and fitness forum, we can find fat acceptance and land whale, which is an extremely obese female. So from this heat map, we can see that most of the words in the glossary are insults and ironic words toward women. In conclusion, beyond the mainly pro-feminism mainstream perspective, it's possible to find some really inflamed communities whose bottom-up vision is very different from the mainstream one. This led us to the third phase of the project.
So the controversy raised again, around the topic of feminism made some violent communities become more and more large. And this project focuses on the anti-feminist perspective of women's image, role, and behavior. The Anti-Feminist Manifesto is a provocative guide of 5 steps to make sure that women didn't brainwash you. The website intent is to provoke, trigger, and open a discussion about hate speech against women to a larger public. The whole project is built using real and unedited comments around the internet. And the website can initially make you laugh, but eventually it strikes you and makes you stand against the normalized misogyny. The target we are addressing our message are misinformed people who don't want to identify themselves as feminists because of the bad reputation this word is too often associated to, and people who don't really have a clear position about the topic. The layout of the website is divided into 7 tabs containing different statements. Every tab is composed by 3 parts: the cover with the statement and the illustration, and an interactive visualization. The content of the website is organized by harshness, from the most normalized sexist jokes to the most misogynist beliefs. All women are hysterical is the first one, and it's about irrationality and silliness of women. And the calendar at the end of the page shows some tips to survive that particular period of the month without finishing your day the way she started it, covered in blood. All women are hypocrites. It's a deeper level of hate speech that uses topics like double standards to demonstrate why women are hypocrites. We use a slideshow that maps the memes that we found on the second phase, and that shows how females want equality but also want a special treatment for being a woman. All women are gold diggers. It's a statement that focuses on opportunism and contains a quiz to help you spot if your woman loves you or your wallet. All women are sluts. It proves scientifically the reasons why women are biologically programmed to be sexually promiscuous, and they are associated to animals because of the similarities in their attitudes. All women are biologically inferior to men at the end. It's the most striking one, and it's another scientific explanation while you explore the women's body, you understand why their body, brain, and mind is badly designed. The last tab of the website is for the final plot twist, which reveals to the user the real intent of the website. This section contains a generator of erased insults that the user can share on social media to send for the cause. By click on any of the buttons, you can share them on your social media. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and stories. To trigger our audience even more, we decided to promote the website by doing a launching campaign that consists in a series of provocative posters, which effect should be maximized by the absence of an explicative payoff, and this should push the reader to the main website and to spread the message through a post on different social media. The results of a week of tracking led us to the number of reached users, the source they came from, and the average time on the page, which is 4 minutes and 50 seconds. The results of this campaign was very striking to us in very unexpected ways. A lot of people decided to share some stories on Instagram, posts on Facebook, and again, Instagram. And some other people decided to participate in the real world by destroying some of the posters around the campus. And I think that the participation and the enthusiasm of the public gave a resonance to this positive message. And beside the project sake, I think it's the most important thing. And thank you.
We go through all the presentations, and afterward, the ground floor, there is a big interactive touch screen where you can explore the websites and all the artifact produced by the students. And if you have questions, of course, later you can interact with the students. So now we go through presentations, and you have time after and the means to see the work again and interact with the students.
Hello, everyone. We are Group 2. Today, we are going to talk about our project, the exploration about data center. First, we choose algorithm artificial intelligence as our main topic, and we do a further analysis on it. And finally, we choose energy issue as our main direction. Because we are really curious about how much energy is consumed behind the artificial intelligence, and whether its benefit is bigger than its cost. So we focus on the data center energy consuming and divide it into 3 things. For the first one, we choose energy management as our main topic to explode. Because we think for the energy consumed, the first thing we need to understand is what factor will cause it and what will affect it. So we also find a lot interesting phenomena and laws behind the data center location. And for our website, we will step by step to explain the exploration process about data center. First, we introduce the basic situation about data center area, and then we show the current trend about the global situation. About our website, the most content is talk about China's situation. And because China is the biggest energy consumed region in the world, so in the end, we also shows the exploration result. There have five influencing factors about the affect the data center energy location, and we divide it into cost-oriented and market-oriented and ambient. That's all content about our phase one. So.
In phase two, we focus on the the media attention towards the data center energy. And the first question is, what kind of sources are talking about data center energy? And we search the data center energy in both Baidu and Google web search engine, and choose the top 25 websites from each search engine, and manually organize them, and did the visualization by Tableau. And as we can see that only a little information from the social media are showed on the top 25 websites, and most of them are the company websites and data center websites. So the data center, the energy consumption of data center only has the little attention from the public, and this is an area of the professional stakeholders. Most of them are the companies of this area. And the next question is, how is the impression of data center energy through the news media? And we searched the data center energy in Baidu News and Google News search engine, and we can see most of the source of the news are the star companies, and nearly half of them are the star companies, and most of them are positive. And in China, there is 50% of the news from the government, and in the US, there is non-news from the government. And which is the most interesting is the news attitude are almost the same in both China and the US, and nearly 67% of them are positive, and 30% of them are neutral, and only a few of them are active. So with phase three, we decided to do something that connect to our daily life, and so this is our website in phase three, and we want to find a more clear way to let the people understand how much data you consumed in the virtual life. So.
Okay. So wait, sorry. Okay. So here it is our homepage about our data center. Okay. Oh, I know. We use the concept of Schrödinger's data box to represent our concept. It means that we have a tsunami of data approaching. Everything is right now is digitalized, and it could be a huge amount of number today, and data is closely replaced to our daily life. We consume that we have data box that collects things from virtual world and deliver it to data centers like a secret box. If you look at the box without opening it, we will never know how much data in it. And here in our homepage, you can click here is the introduction about what we have done in phase one and phase two. And here you can click and press, you will know, based on the data from last phase, our conclusion is at the present, the public does not pay much attention to the data center. So right now, we want to show that energy consumption of data center has not attracted strong public attention. We want we want to let people know more about data center, and we will let people to know how we can make a sustainable data world. So here you can see each guys stand here and do their own things. And if you pay more attention, you will see in their head there will be a small icon. And then you can click each one. You will know how many data they will use per day of each application. And in here, you can keep pressing the left mouse button to interact with. Here you can say every day we consume the data, the number of data in Instagram would be 283,000 per day, and the electricity consumption can make about 3 billion cup of espresso. It's such a huge number of data we used. Here we can click this man, and this a YouTube data box, and in this we can outlay could cost about 8 million GB per day, and the electricity consumption can allow a Tesla about 20,000 laps around the equator. Also, in here, you can see about the Twitter data box. The number here, you can see our per day, we could cost about 155,000 GB per day in Twitter. And this could allow us to read about 3 million newspapers per day. So such a huge number of that. And we left 3% let you to explore them. Also, here we can click this box here. We will find that based on what I have talked before, this a huge number of data will need about 216 servers in our data center. If you find that this since it's such a long distance from you, we will make a small game for you to let you know how will you connected with these data centers. In here, you can find that here is a subtitle, how much energy do you consume in the digital world? In each blank, you can enter into or input the number of answer you want to you can input the number of it, such as this is how long do you watch YouTube every day. After you enter each questions, you can click here to you will know totally you will generate it how many MB data in digital world every day you will consume. So maybe you can try this a small game by yourself, and after this you will find such it will be a very huge number. It is a data for beyond, it's far beyond your imagination. So fortunately, through it, it is easy to cut down on data we use, also energy consumption without hindering your experience. We let you, okay, we know that. And here we make you, some small tips for you to let you to here, you can click each side of the box. There will be 6 tips for you to let you know how could you reduce the consumption on the virtual world. So is our homepage, our website for the phase 3. And okay, maybe I can have a try for you. You can like for 1 hour, and how long for 1 hour, and how many emails, about 20, 30. and 1 hour and 1 hour, and you can click here. You can find that how many data you could use. So that is a small game, and this is how we represent in our website. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everybody. We are group 3, and we are the group that worked on food economics. As we know, food economics is a very hot topic nowadays because everybody's asking, we are asking ourselves as how to sustain our world, how is possible to beat the environmental challenges that food production for everybody can produce. And that's why at the beginning was not easy to select just one topic. And so we decided to explore it little by little and trying to understand what are the biggest food trends right now, because for us it was interesting to start from the social media and the social media impact on the food behavior we have. That's how we landed to the topic of avocado trade. Avocado trade is nowadays one of the hottest trends in food. Everybody's eating avocado, everybody is using it, it's very trendy. So the first thing we try to see is how is the imaginary really for real on the social media. And this is a short video we collected of the biggest, the first 10 results that you get on YouTube for the QE avocado. And as you can see, it's a very funny way to see the argument, to see the topic. So we started to ask, no, it's okay. To ask ourselves what lays behind this. So how much avocado the world produces nowadays, and how it's possible to satisfy this hunger, this way to see the topic. And so we started by understanding what is the trend. So this is a way to visualize the avocado toast sales in USA for in the last years, and you can see there is a very big increase. So that's the value of the market, and that's huge in our opinion. And so our first website, our first phase was dedicated to understand how about the production of what is called nowadays the green gold. And this is the situation in the last decade, and there has been an increase, and you can see the percentages of the increasing of this. But also we can understand that this very huge player here is Mexico. So Mexico alone provides around the 40% of the total production in the world. And that's a huge number, and this brought us questions at what cost. So it's easy to suspect that for this huge intensive production, there is be some consequence. And that's what we looked for. So with great avocados come great consequences. So how do we produce, and how Mexico produce this huge quantity? Basically, there is one state of the Confederation of Mexico that produces alone the 90% of the entire production of Mexico. That is called Michoacan. In Michoacan, to sustain this intensive agriculture, this is the total number for the agricultural deforestation. So 50,000 acres of forest land are deforested every year, and around between the 30 and the 40% is due to avocados. And this is almost the size of the deforested land, similar to Easter Island, just to have an idea. The second problem, the second issue we found out is the water. To produce 1 kilogram of avocados is necessary in average to use 283 liters of water. And that's a huge number if compared to other kinds of fruits. So it's very big. The point is, in the official data, it was easy to find traces of this, but not really to grasp the big concerns that can be around this, the production of this fruit. So we had to go further.
So in the second phase, in order to we decided to scrape the web in order to go deeper and find unofficial information. And the first thing that it was possible to notice was that it was very hard to find avocado-related issues on the surface of the web. This visualization showed two different queries that we set on Google Mexico and Google USA. And the first thing that we noticed was that the relevant results which were talking about social issues were very far from the surface of the web. And so the next step was to go in deeper and try to find when the problem started, and what was the development of news around avocado issues during the years. For this visualization, we changed the query and we switched from avocado to avocado trade in order to be more precise and to put apart all that kind of content which were too general and related to advertisement. And here we compare again Mexico and USA as the biggest producers and the bigger importer. And it is possible to notice that there is an increasing of news about trade for USA and about crime events for Mexico. Mexico is the biggest producer, and so it is the first country that experimented first some very biggest problem. And so we decided to concentrate on Mexico, and in particular to criminality related to avocado. This visualization tried to compare the crime events in the country to where the avocado is produced. And it is possible to see that there is a concentration of criminal activities in the region in which avocado is produced. This because there are a lot of cartels in Mexico that were often involved in drug affairs, but later they started to be interested in avocado trade because it is a very lucrative trade. And from 2009 to 2016, more than 8,000 aguacateros, which are avocado producers, were killed by mafia. So these are very strong consequences that we can't even imagine. And so from these consequences come our responsibilities. And so the aim of the third phase was to raise awareness of people on what they are buying and eat every day. And we use avocado only as an example and to make the point that these kind of issues could be present in other kind of foods and products. And we decided to use the visual metaphor of a market for representing the quantity of possibilities and choices that we can do when we buy something. And but we have to be aware and to do informative choices. And so this is the third part and the website.
So as you can see from the website, and there are three main dishes, and that requires different amounts of avocado, and you can choose according to your preference. For example, if you choose guacamole, and it requires 3 avocados. Sorry. And you click the dish, and then you go to the market. And as you can see, there are 6 standard markets, and which symbolize different countries. We use these countries to according to the fact that they are main producer in the world. And at the bottom page, you can see there is a very small place and field treat. And we said this is not evident based on the fact that it's not easy to find on the market. And also the price is a little bit higher compared to other kinds of avocado. So
you can choose 3 avocado from different stand markets, and one, for example, from the New Zealand and Mexico, and one from the Israel. And then you click the cache to check out the results. And you find out the recept and about how much you cost, and also here are some main issues that reflect in each of countries, like the mafia and the deforestation and water security in Mexico. And also there are some problems in the water security in Israel. And also there are some lot of news reports about the theft in New Zealand. So if you want to know more about this fact, just skip to the info page. And for example, if I choose the method, skip to the response page. Wait. Yes, the blood avocado. Sorry, it's because of the internet, I think. And here you can see the distribution of the general of the crime organizations in Mexico. And you can find out lots of reports about the criminal cartels in Mexico. And here the info page, we also have the other issues about the fact like this. And this visualization shows that the trend of the consumption in the Super Bowl. And also here is as we said before, here is the import and export of the world. And about stolen water, and as you can see that, and in Chile there's a problem about the stolen water because of the weather limitations. And cutting down these trees, you can find the fact that the deforestation is quite severe in Mexico. And also here's the theft problems in the New Zealand, and the certification is quite different about the fair trade and eco trade. And the purpose of our project is to erode what you eat, and the consequence what will be. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're group number 4, and we're presenting you our project. Starting from our starting point, our artificial algorithms, from which we developed a subtopic related to profiling people thanks to their data sharing, both offline, meaning the world of facial recognition and security cameras, and online, about harvesting personal data and profiling people to give them services in return. So we decided to focus more on this second aspect, and we developed our first phase website. At first, we have the title, Data Future. Then what might seem just a texture is instead a visualization of it represents the huge amount of data generated by people every day. So we can understand here that this topic of data sharing and data generation is really important and current. Then we identified the 3 main actors involved in this process: people who give their data online, companies and governments who use this data to create personalized services. And then we give a general overview of the revenue generated by big data. And due to the importance of the theme and the continuous growing of data using and data generation, people have the need of being protected because the data we all put online represent our online identity. So we gave an important space to laws worldwide that govern data privacy, also with a map that shows the different type of law of data privacy across the world. Then we arrive at a sort of main point in our research, which is confronting the willingness to trade data for some services and the value that people give to those services given by companies and governments. It was interesting, the gap between these two values, so we highlighted it. And then we went deeper into the analysis by focusing on 15 different countries, the willingness to trade data, comparing it to the confidence that they have and the trust on their own government. Then we have some other findings involving our three actors. So again, people, companies, and governments, and how they interact with each other in this data sharing process, which led us to some final questions, which are, is it possible to think about a future in which each of these three actors can benefit at the same level of this data trading? And will they be able to work together to build a new society model based on this exchange of data? Well, after some research, we were able to answer this kind of question, and we found out that this new society model in which these three actors are working together is already developing in China, and it's a method called the social credit system, which was the focus of our second and third phases. Briefly, such a credit system is created by the Chinese government and will be fully implemented next year. The government is collecting citizens' data, also thanks to and will do, the government gives to each of the citizens a score, which can go up or down. Based on this, people have benefits or can get punished. So the method that we used into the research was following two parallel lines and discovering at the same time the Western and the Chinese point of view. We at first dig into the related contents about such a credit system, then we focused on the comparison between the Western and Chinese different credit score systems and point of views, and at the end we dig deeply just into the Western. So at first we find out the related Wikipedia pages, then we compare such a credit system to the other credit score system existing, and then we focused on what people say about the topic every time on a Western and on a Chinese social network. So we have Google and Baidu, YouTube and Ichi, and Twitter and Weibo. And then at the end, we went deeper just into the Western debate by looking at Reddit threads. So the first protocol that we want to present you is the Google and Baidu protocol. We searched for the word social credit system on both Google and Baidu, which is the Chinese counterpart. We analyzed the first 50 results each, and we read them all, categorizing them based by the approach they were having towards the theme. Here we find out for the first time an important finding in our research. People are, on the contrary, just okay with it. They seem okay. They don't see any controversy in the team itself, as we can see from the visualization. We also find out that the Western world is associating such a credit system to Black Mirror or Orwell's 1984. Then, as we wanted to dig deeper into this key finding, we also searched for the query social credit system on video platforms. So we searched for it on YouTube, Ichi, the Chinese counterpart, and on YouTube in Chinese. And we analyzed the first 30 videos each, watching all of them again and categorizing them based on what they were saying about the topic. So we have again our 6 different approaches. So each part is a video, which is also linked to the original source on the video platforms. So you can, it can be seen. And we categorized the videos both according to the approach and also on the video type. So from which type of channel the videos were coming from to see the differences. So here again, we were able to see the huge difference in the approach between the Western one, most of all against or at least concerned about the topic, and the Chinese one, all informative and neutral, even because they come from news channels at all. We also searched on YouTube in Chinese because we wanted to understand if this controversy exists in China or not, and if on Ichi was just censored. And we were able to grasp a little bit more of controversy, but not like the Western one. Finally, we did the same research on Twitter and Weibo, searching for posts in a week of November on the team on both social networks. We again categorized them based on the approach the posts were having, and the bigger ones are the most popular ones. We can clearly see again with this visualization that the Western posts are way more controversial than the Chinese counterpart. So from these key findings and the duality of the process, our target of the third phase is mostly the Western people who feel like this is a controversial theme. And since we find out also that the majority of these Western people see such a credit system as a sort of game or something that comes from a TV series and is not aware of what exactly it is, our goal is to bring awareness. So, and to take people to a reflection, showing them the research also we just presented and collecting their own opinions. We ourselves as a group are concerned towards these topics. So there's a concern shade in our final website, which is an interactive experience with a storyboard that we designed to symbolize the reality, in which the user needs to help a cameraman, that stands for the government, and to spot the characters that are doing some bad actions. In this way, let's see our website. Okay, so at first we have an introduction to the experience, explaining what you need to do. So we introducing you to the world of camera wheel, and we ask you to help this cameraman spotting these bad people. So you have a legend on the right, and you need to collect every character you have on that legend. When you go over them, you look at the characters with the eye of a recognition camera, just like it happens in such a credit system. If the character is doing a bad action, it means you have to collect him, so it turns red. If not, it just trembles and you need to go on. So you need to go through all the experiences and you need to collect all the characters. They're doing some bad actions, just like buying alcohol and stuff, which are the real bad action who give you punishment in the real social credit system. And when you collect them all, you find out that this legend wasn't just a legend of experience, but it's a blacklist, a real one, and they've been put into a blacklist and they can't do some actions anymore, just like booking the train, booking an hotel, the real punishment that they have. And that this experience is something real and already existent called social credit system. So then we explain to you what is a social credit system, and we explain to you the research part, in which we explain the key findings that I just showed you with the protocols that I just showed you. So we have the Google and Baidu one, the YouTube and Ichi, and the Twitter and Weibo. We thought it was interesting to show the data. And finally, we arrive in the square of the debate. Here we have all the approaches collected during the research, and you can also put your own character in the person that you identify yourself the most. So if you want, you can also leave a comment saying what you need to say about such a credit system. After that, you can also read the other answers that the other users left before you, so you can understand what the debate is about. In this way, we can have a never-ending research about the team, collecting what people have to say. At the end, we present you ourselves. So the group worked at this project with also the link to the 2 previous phases to have a full comprehension towards the whole project and social credit system. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are Group 5, and we are going to talk about our project behind the label. As you can see, we are talking about study drugs. But what are study drugs? Study drugs are stimulants or psychostimulants. So this type of drugs are used by people to enhance brain activity. And when we call them study drugs, we are referring to them to stimulants used by students to enhance their focusing and studying skills. A trend that was very interesting was that one that for because excuse me, for what the study drugs growth in terms of percentage from 2010 and 2017 was very high through every drugs inside college, and we can see that its percentage is much high, more high than other drugs as cocaine, and the same as marijuana, that is the most used drug inside college. So starting from here, we developed our fourth phase project, Dope Your Grades, in which we wanted to analyze more deeply the usage of smart drugs in US colleges. And to do this, we passed through different steps, like the reason why do they use this type of drugs, how do they get them, so with prescription or without it, and which are the main effects that this type of drugs give to them. Finally, we thought that was very interesting to compare the level of competitiveness of each university in USA. So we calculated through the ACT level of the universities and the popularity, the drug popularity rate inside every university. So here, this is a part of our visualization in which we can see from the bottom to the top the ACT level from 16 to 35, and every square represents a university. The sides of each square represent the drug popularity rate, and an interesting trend is that in the upper part of this visualization, it's more common to find more university with an high popularity rate. So more the university is competitive, more is possible to find an high popularity rate of stimulants.
So moving on to the phase 2 with the info that we gathered, we decided to focus on the image that different actors across US area are shaping about the study drugs phenomenon, the main one being the Adderall. The main actors that we focused on are the advertisers, universities, news providers, and the students. The protocol about the advertisers, here we gathered the post adverts from 1920 and refined them according to the topics and the timeline. Here we can see the filters, which you can mix and match, and to see which posters are from which categories, and hovering we can see the bigger image. The main thing that this protocol is answering is the fact that advertisers are trying to create a positive image around the study drugs and kind of try to shape it as it makes you a better human being without stressing on the fact that it's a class B drug with side effects. Moving forward, it's the universities. Here we gathered info from the health services sites of 40 top-rated universities and 40 universities with the most study drugs popularity. What we refined here is this info overall mentioned in their health sites. Was it mentioned directly in their health sites external info, and also how precise did they call it? Starting from the prescription drugs, going more precise to the names of the medication. And what we can see from this protocol is that the higher the popularity of the drug, the less the universities tend to care about the cause, and they don't try to limit their students from the overall usage. And moving on.
The third protocols is about newspapers, the publishers, and we wanted to understand how they convey this problem through their publication. So we selected the top 10 US newspaper by circulations, and we put the query Adderall from a time span from 2012 and 2018. And at that point, we had more than 1,000 results that we refined until 146 articles according to the articles related to students. And then we distinguished the different categories that you can see on the right side of the tree map of the visualization. The different clusters are the different newspapers, while the red boxes are the ones related to the study problems, while the other one is not related at all to the study. And the different topics on the right side, as we can see, are performance, stay focused, and pressure, as we can see, are more related to study. So they convey more the meaning of the boosting of the brain enhancement through the different publishing, while addiction, selling, other very important problems are not treated as the same way. The fourth one is about how the students see the phenomenon, how they talk about it. So we wanted to see through Reddit, the social network, to see how they talk about that, because they are treated in a more free manner in that social network. So we wanted to understand, firstly, the peak periods of Adderall query through Google Trends. And as you can see, the trend line in the upper part, the peak periods are around usually the final exam period in the United States. Then we dived into the web, and we did a script with Python in Reddit, and we collected more than 1,000 posts related to Adderall, and then we refined them until 147. And at that point, we wanted to distinguish in two parts, as the one related to study, consume Adderall, use Adderall, and abuse it for studying, and the one related to health problems or other personal experience. And the second part was very important even for the third phase, especially for the side effects. As you can see, the boxes, especially the red, are always around very close to the finals period exams that are the gray ones highlighted. So through these four social actors, we understood that the US society has got the normal view of the phenomenon. Maybe they can understand that taking those stimulants, especially Adderall, can give you a boost, but they cannot understand what is behind the problem. So as this distorted view, you want to flip it to understand, to let them know that they can take it, but there are many side effects and many risks about that. And we wanted to do this with a double-sided website. So we called it Behind the Label. So we want to let them know that there's something hidden behind this problem. And here we got our website.
Okay. So the website opens with a short animation that is describing the term of study drugs and also showing the double perspective on this phenomenon in United States, and also giving first impression of this double perspective by animation. And it leads you to the main page of our website. With title and with link to about section. So then when we move to the main page, that is explaining the three main actors that talks about the phenomenon of study drugs, the advertisement. So we analyzed 80 posters and we show in the info how we get this information. So we saw that pharmaceutical concerts, they show only positive perspective of this phenomenon, but they don't talk too much about side effects of study drugs that we are showing in the bad part of this section. And then we move to universities. So we choose 10 top universities in United States, like MIT, and we see that when universities are better, so more competitive, also the study drugs rate can be really high, like Duke is 45%. But then when we move to the bad part, we can see that the same university didn't mention nothing about study drugs in their health policy. For example, Duke, Brown, or Yale. Yeah, and then we move to the info part. And then when he type his average, it starts the animation that is allegory of studies under the influence of study drugs. So we see at the beginning it is really faster and better, but immediately some side effects appears, so he can't focus. His heartbeat starts to be faster, and it's impossible to study like this. Yeah, and let's see how the average grade is. Okay, so as we see, the average grade that was typed didn't change, and it was proved also by the research from University of Maryland that study drugs, they can't change your average. So at the end, to stimulate the empathy of our users, we posted 16 real quotes of study drug users with links to Reddit. So we can see that they are real quotes of study drugs users. And we finish our website with, we hope, a rhetorical question. Sure that you want to take more? If you want to know more, it takes you back to the main page.
Group 6.
Good afternoon, we are Group 6, and we would like to present you our research about the opioid crisis, also known as opioid epidemic, that we have chosen from the wider topic of drug and legalization. This topic is maybe not really well known in Europe, but in the US is a really big deal. In fact, an American between 25 and 60 years old is more likely to die for an opioid overdose than for example, a car crash. And in general, overdoses are the leading cause of death under 50s today. And the situation is so serious that Donald Trump in 2017 stated it as a national health emergency. So to understand what is going on and how America got there, we first started with an exploration of official data. So data mostly from the US government. And at this point, we decided to focus mainly on prescription opioids. So medicines that are perfectly legal and are used to treat pain, but that are chemically similar to heroin and are playing a huge role in this crisis. And what we discovered through our research was that from the 90s, the prescriptions and consumption of these medicines has grown sharply. And today the country is the one with the highest per capita consumption of the meds, even if they can be really dangerous because there is a high risk of addiction and also of accidental death for overdose of these drugs.
So after digging inside the more official data, in the second phase of our work, we focused our research with this question: what is the perception of prescription opioids in the US pop culture? This because we asked ourselves, how's that these medicines that are considered by by many scientific research as not safe, how is that they're so popular in the Americas? So is there any different way of perceiving them in the US? So we want to show you the three more relevant visualization that we got from that. So the very first question that we asked ourselves was, how strong is the debate around the definition of opioid epidemic? And to answer this question, we used Wikipedia. So we went inside the page of Wikipedia of opioid epidemic, and we traced all the changes that have been made since the date start to appear, that was the 9th of February 2017, till the 14th of November 2018. So what we traced is that there were more than 700 add-ons on this page, and this for us meant that probably there is a very strong debate around that, also because sometimes pieces of pages are deleted and then they are re-added. The second question that we ask ourselves, so to get into the American culture, we wanted to see if there were any TV series that talk about the problem. So what we did was to trace the TV series that are recurrent or main characters that was an opioid addict, that had a problem with opioid. And in the end, we have this kind of visualization in which we can see that in the last years, the opioid addicted start to appear more and more inside the TV series. And the other thing we wanted to show were the appearance of those addicts, so to find out if there was any kind of stereotypes. And what we found was that most of them are white male, and this is in accord with the more official data that wants the prescription opioid addicted to be a white male with the means to afford an health insurance in the US. And so finally, the last thing we searched was which kind of images people share about opioid. And to do that, we scraped the hashtag opioids inside Instagram. So we produced this network that shows what are the main images. And to do that, we scraped 250 images from the opioid, hashtag opioid pages. And then we clustered them with an image recognition software. So this point is a clarification because Instagram policy, like with the hashtag that promotes bad health habits, such as anorexia, but also opioids, started to censor all these kind of hashtags. So the hashtag opioid didn't have any kind of bad message, but had lots of people having meeting, lot of motivational text, lots of tracking, so healthy lifestyles. So to answer to the final question, our very first question, that was, what's the perception? Is there any perception of the opioids in the US? The answer is yes. The opioid issue is well present in the pop culture, but it seems to be mostly treated in a sort of implicit way.
So our third phase started combining together what we found from the previous two phases. And on one end, we had a deep view on the phenomenon, and on the other end, we had the perception of it in the culture. And when we talk about a problem that is killing every year since the 90s a lot of people, the first idea that you can have is that to talk only about who has the biggest fault in it. But for us, this wasn't the right choice, because the problem is not someone. The problem is about a system, the whole healthcare system that with its past and present choices is killing a lot of people. And this is the greatest paradox that we want to deliver with our idea and with our project, because system and so paradox are the main keywords of our narrative, and we want to deliver them talking with the aim to make the user think about which is the implicit nature of the phenomenon, and also give a message also to European people that doesn't know anything about it. So we designed our website. Okay, so we designed our website that has the interaction and the visual style that reminds us also of the paradox theme, and is all concentrated on the theme of the system, and more in particular to three figures that for us are really important in our research, that are the pharma companies, the doctors, and the patient, that for us are also the suppliers, the dealers, and the addicts. In fact, for the pharma companies, the main information we want to deliver is the fact that they created a strong marketing campaign at the end of the 90s to promote this type of medicines for a lot of uses, and not only for the first ones. For in the doctor section, we analyze the dramatic increase of prescription and the fact that during these 20 years, doctors prescribe this type of medicines for a lot of uses, and not only for the first ones, for many reasons. And for the patient, the fact that these medicines are really strong, and we try to identify the identity of this type of addicts that are really different from other type of drugs, because are more related to the white man that can afford an insurance, an health insurance. Then at the end, as we said at the beginning, we started from a general point of view with the dependence and the legalization. And with these three phases, we focus more and more arriving where we are right now, with an idea of this complex system. But at the very end, we wanted to go back to a general point of view, and leaving the user that goes on our website with a reflection that could work regardless his point of view, his nation, or his life or background. So we asked to the user that the phenomenon regards only USA, but if we think only for a second to something legal, accessible to people, and that can be dangerous to death, is there anything similar in your country? Thank you.
Hello, everyone. We are Group 7, and our topic was climate change, and we focused our research on how climate change is impacting on water resources and causing water scarcity. So during our first phase, called Troubled Waters, we tried to map all the connection that water scarcity has with internal and external affairs in countries affected by this problem. And we visualize this in a website and in a visualization. But in this presentation, we are going to show you just the visualization where we use the metaphor of water ripples that created turbulence in like calm water. And each group of ripples is a country, and each ripple is a conflict, and and the appearance of the ripple, it's describing the features of a conflict. And after doing this, we noticed that most of the conflict were related to water infrastructures and such as dams, and this was our starting point for our second phase.
So starting from where we left, our second phase, which is called the Amazon's Damnation, focuses on the topic of dams and the controversies that is also mappable online, created by dams. And we had an approach that went like from the general to the specific, but cross-language analysis, so both on like international and then local point of view, because we started to map, as you can see, like going from the general to the specific. First, general exploration of dam controversies, after which we chose a exemplary case study, which is Belo Monte Dam in Brazil, but what was like the focus for like the rest of our second phase research, which we addressed first through a media perspective, so what sources online are saying both in Portuguese and in English on the topic, and then like scraping what the actors that are actually involved in the debate are like directly saying. So if we go and see the website, we can see that in this first protocol that like we're going to present today, we are still like on the general side, so we focus more on the using the Wikipedia category dam controversies. We tried like to map which are the most controversial dams using like visits and edits as a like meter to measure controversies, and we classified them based on their state, and we can see like some of them pop out, like for instance the Three Gorges Dam in China, Belo Monte Dam, which is the one that we chose. And we then decided after this protocol and the previous one to focus on Belo Monte Dam in Brazil, because it has had like a very wide resonance through like the years, and like since Portuguese is like an accessible language, we managed also like to focus on the local perspective by accessing original language content. And so like in the second step, we focus more like on the media perspective. And so like in this protocol, after like mapping the media sources, we focused on like what are like the language used by the websites, and this allowed us both in English. So here you can see like the words used by the English sources, and in the Brazilian sources, so with the Portuguese, to address all like the wide variety of themes that like characterize this topic, so which are like very varied, from energy to construction to like into like the project of dams itself, and even like indigenous rights that like are like one of the main topics. And we can see that like each source has its own like sphere of words that like belong to the category. After this, like after we mapped the actors that are directly speaking of this, and in our third phase we moved like on Facebook, and because it's like the place where both the actors and the audience are like interacting with themselves in a like an open space, and we try to map how much they are talking about the topic in the Facebook posts and comments. And we can see like these are all the main actors that we mapped, that go from a like wide range, from like private companies to even like celebrities such as Sting, who unfortunately he's not like speaking a lot about the topic. But we can see like, for instance, some trends in like in what we found out, like for instance on the day of the dam's inauguration, we have like some peaks in some pages. This is like the Greenpeace and in the comments, and generally like we can see that like the trend is still, even though the dam is already like has been inaugurated, like there are still people speaking about it in concurrence with like the Brazilian elections that have been like going on recently. So what did we find out from this? Okay. What we found out from this was like that there are like a lot of stakeholders involved, like that spur from like every range of Brazilian society, and everyone has its own position, from like the official company that runs the dams to like NGOs and other opposing actors, and like everyone is equally believable. So like from this starting point, we wanted to try to communicate the complexity of the situation to our public through our third phase.
So for our third phase, which is called the Great Amazonian Barrage, we wanted to create, through our website, we wanted to create like an interactive container for some of the most interesting content that we found out in the second phase, in order for the user to make its own mind and then form its own opinion, also pushed by the necessity of taking a decision for the dam itself at the end of its experience. So from phase two, the elements that we took were like the actors and their own respective opinions about the dam, the issues which are created around the dam, and also the bureaucratic and the legal aspect of this infrastructure, which is represented by the licenses. In fact, this dam has a very complex and long history of bureaucracy and legal process. And this dam is still missing the last license for it to work at full power, which is the operational license. And so we used this example as a driver for our experience. You can see the operational license is still missing. So what we wanted to do, what we wanted the user to feel is like the multiplicity of of opinions and positions around the dam, and the pressure of taking a decision in such a complex problem. So let's see our website. No, thank you. Dov'è il mouse? Vabbè, dai, vado sul sito. Ok. So while the page loads, it's not loading. Okay, it loaded. So the Great Amazonian Barrage. Barrage is just a very cool word to say dam. So let's go on, and we have a brief introduction about what is hydroelectric power and what is its place in modern energy production. Then we can see like a focus on the dam Amazon. So how the Brazilian government is behaving with building mega dams on the Amazon River. And this is an introduction for the Belo Monte complex. Aspettate. No, aspettate. It's coming. Ci mette tanto a caricare. Okay, so From this interactive map, which is scaled like this, for I don't know why, we have like positioned on the map like the different issues. This is the map of the Xingu River, so the geographical location of the dam. We have disposed the different topics and the issues of the dam, and we can click on it to see, like, for instance, this is Altamira Hospitals, so the sanitation in the city near the dam. And we can see for each issue the official statement about North Energy running the dam, and like another statement which is opposite to the official statement. So for each of the issue, the user can decide who to believe to. And he can also explore the actual sources of the material. And after and on the map, some information about that topic is displayed dynamically. And when the user has explored all the issues and has made up its mind, he can then proceed to decision. So time to decide. If you were in charge for the dam's future, would you grant the operational license? So would you let the dam continue working, or would you stop it? Let's say I want to grant the operational license. So a scenario is proposed where Belo Monte Dam will now work at its full power, but we show the user also the other side of the situation, where the Xingu River's discharge will drop as the dam will work, and so much less energy will be produced. And we can also see the other scenario. So if you deny the license, Belo Monte Dam will be shut down, but keep in mind that without Belo Monte, a lot of CO2 will be created by burning carbon fossils fuels. So when you click got it, you can see the results of the whole interactive process of the other people who saw the website. And you're confronted with the reality of what is going on right now in these days around Brazil, where the new, as many of you know, the new president is merging environmental and other ministries, and basically opening up the doors for many mega dam projects, etc. What will the future hold? Only time will tell, and thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the DensityDesign Open Day. We are Group 8, and we are here to introduce our work, which came out with more than one difficulty and mistakes, but we're really proud of it, so thank you for your attention. The research domain that we had to face, it's about migrations. And since the first approach, we considered migration as an essential trait in the evolution of our own nature. So what's the next step in human evolution? A mass vertical migration could be the next giant leap for mankind to keep evolution safe on other planets, so we could preserve our own species from all the incognity concerning the future of our planets, climate change, nuclear war, new virus, artificial intelligence gone wrong. Our one multiplanetary species, as sustained by Elon Musk and Professor Stephen Hawking in its last book. But how do we do that? Right now, private companies are propelling the aerospace sector forward, and their long-term goals could lead humans farther than ever. Think for a human colony on Mars. They are able to design an innovative propulsion and spaceflight system, and now sets the time for innovation in the entire sector. This is the scenario we explore in the first phase of the project, where space is no longer the sole preserver of national agencies, which now hold the sphere of scientific research while facing partnership and competitions with private companies. Last year, NASA signed almost 1,400 agreements under their Space Act, providing private sector almost $1 billion of investment. Fun fact, 2018 will be the first year with the first US manned missions since the retirement of Space Shuttle in 2011. And that will be delivered by SpaceX in the month of April. So in the second phase of the project, our approach led us to explore how the possibility of mass vertical migration to space is debated on different media, from news to private-owned ones. So we asked ourselves, what's the relation between migration and space exploration matters? We found out that amongst the related results on Wikipedia page, space colonization is the link between these huge domains. So we focus our research through these queries, where space exploration is related to current achievements in the sector, while space colonization is referred to a more futuristic perspective. And diving into the web, we found that there are some mutually shared topics for both queries concerning technology, future mission to Moon and Mars, and of course, the effects of space permanence on human body. However, the space exploration query insists more on nowadays spaceflight and technology achievements, with a peak in the month of February, when SpaceX successfully launched the Falcon Heavy, which is now the world's most powerful rocket ever built. While talking about space colonization, it shows some more interest on the project for a future long-term permanence of humans on Mars and Moon, as well as the skepticism about this perspective. The results have been retrieved from more than 300 news provided by Google News last year, and that was our starting point to feature the most interesting contents for public engagement in the next phase of the project. Another question that we asked ourselves concerned the personalities involved in the debate. We found that, except for CEOs and companies who naturally got lots of mentions, scientific research personalities were the most mentioned for both queries. They were cited as author of multidisciplinary studies, articles who positively sustain future plans for space colonization, but also to criticize them. This demonstrates that talking about space is just not about the money or business plan, but mostly about the intricate natural laws that regulate space itself. We go in depth with analysis on scientific press in further research questions, but now we want to focus on how we choose to communicate all these issues to the public. From the second phase, we collected all those certain facts concerning the future of space travel. Our attempt was to create a guide useful to communicate progress and discoveries about life beyond Earth, to make users, or maybe future space migrants, to understand what is expecting them. So Living for Living, it's a web interactive experience that we designed to enable users to customize their own space migration plan while gathering information on the future of space travel through different reservation steps and hidden focus sheets. So the website is structured as a metaphoric vertical journey from the bottom to the top, as from the Earth to the outer space. All the focus panels open from the side. And in this introduction that you're seeing now, we explain motivations beyond the necessity of living for living through the voice of Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking, and we lead the user to the lift off button and call to action, which is actually the start point of the experience. In the main selection, users choose a preferred destination amongst 4 different planets that could be potentially habitable. Not all options here displayed are available yet because some of them are still too distant for our capabilities. Let's think about exoplanets. But they all have a common feature. They're located in the habitable zone of their solar system. And this is the right place, the right distance from their star, where life can be supported. Moon and Mars are the available destinations and the most referred in space colonization debate. So these are the ones that's selected by the user, are presented with data to compare different conditions on its surface to those on planet Earth. Once the users pick the chance, they'll be asked to choose which company they'd rather travel with between SpaceX and Blue Origin, which are now the only ones who have solid plans for future colonizations. These companies are making space travel possible and effectively cheaper than before, thanks to their patented reusable rockets. Their mission is to create an open pathway to space in order to give mankind the chance to become a multiplanetary species. And users will be given in-depth information for both the companies about past missions, rockets, and passenger capsules. But where will we live once we get to our next known planet? We selected winning projects from NASA and European Space Agency's public challenges, both for Moon and Mars environments. And our aim was to develop the most sustainable and cost-efficient habitat proposal. So the construction will be entirely managed by robots equipped with 3D printing arms that use materials gathered in situ mixed with plastic taken from the Earth. So for each habitat, you see the user will see different features, all meant to give the occupants the terrestrial feel of a long permanence home in an alien environment. Each and every room has been designed to satisfy specific needs of the guest, ranging from the entertainment space, indoor greenhouses, and sunlight optimization systems. So once all the choices have been made, it's mandatory to take a look at terms and condition panel just before finalizing the booking. Space can be really dangerous for our Earth. In these focus sheets are shown 17 potential risks of permanence in space, clustered in 4 macro areas. For example, one of the first dangers to our Earth is the change of gravity pull, which could affect muscles, strength, and bones density. But another one, which may be the most hazardous as it's invisible, is space radiation coming from the sun, that it's unfiltered because other planets have no atmosphere. And once the user checked every potential risk, the reservation experience comes to an end and the ticket is finally ready to be purchased. So in last panel, user is informed about important change that may occur to departure dates and space pass costs, which are directly linked to continuous innovation in the sector. Fun fact, on Monday, when we were closing this keynote, a pop-up informed us about the price set by SpaceX for the Mars colonization journey, which is now set at $500,000, but may easily go under $9,000 in almost 15 years. The experience closed with a picture from Earth taken by Voyager 1 in 1990 at a record distance of 6 billion kilometers away. From that distance, Earth is shorter than 1 pixel, and the famous message by Carl Sagan is set up there and insists on this disruptive perspective. Let's think about it when we think that we're maybe not able to get where we want. Thank you very much.
Good evening. We are Group 9, and we focus on the hate speech phenomenon. We started our analysis by asking ourselves, what is hate speech? From our research, it emerged that the hate speech is a controversial and debated phenomenon, as it lies in a complex nexus with free speech. Several treaties, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, have attempted to define its contours. Indeed, hate speech cannot be easily defined, but by agreement it expresses loathing and intolerance, and its consequences can range from mere bullying or intimidation to actual violent events. In the first phase of our project, we explored official data and we analyzed how IT companies in Europe, meaning private social media, deal with the filtering process of hateful contents on their platforms. One of the hardest battlegrounds is online because of its intrinsic characteristics of transnationality, anonymity, unpredictability, and permanence. The social networks are among the main actors in the environment that are required to manage this kind of problem. IT companies have their own role models, called policies, that are of course influenced by laws in Europe. And these policies regulate the filtering process or the removal of improper contents for each platform. The most relevant in the EU is the Code of Conduct on Countering Illegal Hate Speech Online, that since its establishment has done 3 surveys and has published them in order to understand how IT companies react to notifications of illegal hate speech. During the 3 monitorings, as the problem became more and more evident, there was a relatively increasing number of contents that at the end of the process were actually removed. And this calls to the stage another controversial issue. Should this regulation of contents be considered filtering or censorship? The research we made showed us that the context is very fundamental to understand what is hate speech and how difficult it is to define the limits and free speech, confirming the fact that this phenomenon is very complex and controversial. Therefore, moving on to the second phase of our project, in such a complex panorama, we tried to follow a possible path that a user could take in order to get information and form an opinion about its speech. Following first a theoretical approach, and then a more practical one, to finally discover which are the real user opinions about the controversy. So, starting off with the theoretical approach, what do users find when they search for hate speech on Google? As it arises from these first visualizations, the opinions tend to be at the opposite and not neutral, meaning against or pro-hate speech, indeed not neutral. Moreover, most of the sites give definition of hate speech that encourage to regulate the phenomenon by law. We can also see that the most used source is Wikipedia, which stands out between all the others. Moving then to the practical approach to the issue, we decided to focus on the analysis of actual hate sites, as called and classified by Rational Wiki. We've seen how the most relevant pages are mostly news and news aggregator sites, and moreover, these kind of sites tend to focus on political and racial issues, taking a position also in the field of knowledge and even some aspect of religion. And after having examined their ideological characteristics and their visibility, we then analyze how do users reach these hate sites. And at the first glance, we can notice how, in most cases, the traffic is generated by the direct connection to the site by the user, followed then by the organic search of the site. What does it mean? This demonstrates the fact that the users already know the site they want to access and connect directly. Considering this, we can and we have deduced the existence of a hate echo chamber, meaning that these sites actually link and connect to each other. Finally, we focus on the user's opinions. We decided to use discussion on Paolo as a sample after having analyzed how people form an opinion through online sources. And since Cialo is a social network specifically designed to engage people in organized discussions, we decided to analyze two specific conversations about hate speech that took place on the platform. And these two specific conversations are, should hate speech be illegal, and should hate speech be legally protected? The visualization shows the lack of a shared viewpoint among the sample group, since the users participating in the discussions have very different opinions on the subject, and this suggests that the debate is intense and very far from agreement. And as we discover from the first visualization, the opinions, the sources that the users find on the web tend to promote strongly polarized opinions, as we've seen, against and pro-hate speech, not neutral. So we expected to find the same situation in this sample. But against our expectation, the discussion, rather than promoting these two kinds of polarization, showed instead the intrinsic nuances of the topic, what we have called the hate shades, making the controversy alive, understandable, and of course, debatable. During the analysis of the user opinions on hate speech, the need and the importance of regulating this phenomenon by law was highlighted several times in order to avoid any harm or crime that could derive from it. And in our research, it emerged how important it is the role that the major IT companies like Facebook, Google, and Twitter play in the hate speech and filtering discussion. Since during our analysis, it has become clear that these IT companies are often accused of censorship of contents. And considering this conclusion and the opinions emerged during all the visualization we've seen, we can deduce that the discussion is much broader boundaries than what we expected, underlining the fundamental question that the hate speech controversy generates. Who should have the responsibility and the power to regulate what may or may not be said online?
So, starting off from this question, our aim for the third and the final phase of our project was to engage the public itself and give the participant an active role in what we could define a proper call to action. We personally believe in hate speech and we are against every form of it, but we don't think that censorship of contents offers the best solution to the problem. Indeed, as it emerged from the phase 2, we noticed how the discussion, rather than promote two polarizations, showed instead the intrinsic nuances of the topic, what we called the hate shades. We think it's important to show each of these opinions and not silencing any of them. We believe that there can be other ways to regulate content besides censorship, like the self-regulation of contents. Therefore, our aim is to engage the user and let them actually experience it. For our concept creation, we choose to use a metaphor, the one of sound, and we wanted not only to represent speech, but also to give the user the possibility to listen to it and to regulate the volume by raising or muting it, which means giving voice or silencing it. We will therefore give the possibility to try the self-regulation method used by platforms like Reddit, for example. And the user will interact with an interface inspired by music softwares, and they will use sliders to manipulate the volume of a content, choosing how much visibility to give to it. But which contents are we talking about? We are going to propose controversial and hateful contents to the users, divided in 4 categories that we choose from the categories of speeches that we held to be hate speech from the major IT companies, as we've seen in phase 2. And we are talking about disability, gender, race, and religion. The contents were precisely found online, and this fact makes clear that they can be shared and spread in an easy way, and they maybe become viral. We search for contents in social media, in social networks like Reddit, Twitter, Facebook, and also in some the rational wiki 8 sites that we discovered and analyzed during phase 2. We decided to work with different kind of different kind of contents like comments, posts, memes, videos, articles, and papers. All these contents have been reprocessed in order to obtain the audio file on which the user will be able to experiment by manipulating its volume. And for each category, disability, gender, race, and religion, we collected only 6 contents to limit the fruition time of the experience. And we organized the contents in order to create a stream of opinions in an actual speech. Through participation, the user will help to define the community standards and to create a civic moderation that will grow with the empathy of the judgment of all the different points of views and perspectives. We will show that there can be other valid solutions beside censorship by supporting a non-binary division, by emphasizing common practice, and by giving voice to all the nuances of the topic. So let's move on to the actual website. This is what our website looks like, and here's our introduction. So regulating online hate speech has proven to be a hard challenge for IT companies. So what would you do if you had the power to regulate a chart of controversial contents? Select a topic among the following categories. So we click on continue, and for example, we click on gender, for example. Here we have the instruction in order to let the user understand how to process and to regulate content. And at the end, the user have to choose between agreeing or not to agree to let us store the interaction that he will do in our site. Of course, we will click on agree. And here's the mixer interface. So at the top right, we have our content, our controversial content, and at the bottom, there are the subtitles to better follow the audio trace of the content. And on the left and on the right, we have a scale in order to help the user position the drag point of the curve that goes from I can tolerate it to censored line, which is highlighted in red. So, for example, the user can pause the content, go to the previous content to rewatch it, or even go to the following one. And if the user position the drag point down to the censorship line, there will be audio output which is not hearable now, but is a white noise. So the audio of the video of the content will be not recognizable at all. So, for example, we give a randomly positioning of the drag points, and now we click on done, and here's the output of how an IT company would have behaved in such a complex nexus. So there are no shades and no different opinions. But here's what happened when there is the self-regulation of content. So with this approach, nothing will be censored or deleted. The community will decide how much visibility to give to each content, helping to create a civic moderation. So here we highlighted, for example, the interaction of the user. So let's see the results section. And here we have all the interaction that we collected during the last week. And here we give some extra information about the contents that we found online, and also the average moderation rate of each content. And here we can see one by one, anonymously, all the interaction that we collected on the site. At this, and also the source, and also the source of each content. So finally, the experience was designed to be circular. So if you go on the top right on the menu, we can go to the home and restart the experience by restarting, or go to the results section, or to the about section to see other other contents of our research. So thank you very much.
So hello everyone, we are group 10 and our topic is about migration. This semester we focus on migration issue in Malaysia. So why we choose Malaysia? As you can see, we are a group of Chinese students and it is where a good start to, a good start. And so we are more curious about the migration issue about Chinese. So except Singapore, Malaysia has the second largest proportion of Chinese population. But the difference is in Singapore, the number is relatively stable, but in Malaysia, the number has decreased from 37 to 23 through years. So we are curious about this phenomenon, and we wanted to know why, what's the reason to cause this phenomenon. And also, Malaysia is to know as the typical migration country with live there, which is Malay, Malaysian Chinese, and Malaysian Indian. But Malaysia is also known as one of the few countries in the world that has attached the affirmative action to protect the majority, which means it's Malay. So we think, is there going to is that the reason why it caused this phenomenon? So having these curiosities about this country, we begin our phase one. And in this phase, we are exploring the official data about the general migration issue in Malaysia, and we wanted to know that how people live in this country with each other. So we have collected population data of the three ethnic groups, and you can see that the red is Malaysian Chinese that has decreased from 37 to 23. And also we found that the people with the same ethnicity are more tended to live together. For example, the Malaysian Chinese are most of the Malaysian Chinese are living in the western part of this country. And what's more, they tend to speak their own languages. And this kind of somehow leads to the result that people tend to choose different primary school and the middle school because their ethnicity. And because according to their ethnicity, because these schools are taught in different languages. So from this phrase, we have known that Malaysia is a migrant country where people of different ethnicity live separately. But we want to know why, and is there anything to do with the fact that their proportion of the population is declining through years? So in phase two, we want to know more about this phenomenon, and we raised the basic question that when people talk about Malaysian Chinese, what are they talking about? So we took Malaysian Chinese as the keywords and searched it in 3 searching engines and also in different languages. Like the protocol in protocol 1, we searched it in Google Malay, Google US, and also Chinese Baidu. And we found that the topics that being talked more about Malaysian Chinese on Google is economy and politics. But the great difference here we have found is that the topic social status, which is not so much talked in on Google, is talked the most in Baidu. So we want to look deeper and adding speaker as the factor, and we have found that journalists are the most active speaker in these 3 search engine, and the topic are still the same. It's economy, politics, and social status. But on the other hand, we also found that the other speaker that is in academic field, the scholar, they have covered 7 topics, but none of them are from Baidu. So we think there might be some interest difference between these two search engines. So in the third protocol, we looked Malaysian Chinese in the academic field, and we the research question is that how the papers talking about Malaysian Chinese reference to each other. We want to know that in this field, what are they talking about Malaysian Chinese? And it's similar that we found interesting in the previous search that there's a few results in common between these two search engine. And Baidu, but the papers discuss more about ethnic issues and politics, while Google talked more about identity and the medical science. So here is the conclusion that we find that the user on Baidu and Google, they concentrate on the topic that are mostly different. And the other interesting part that we found is that only there are 50% of the results in social status in Baidu mention the fact that Chinese are leaving Malaysia. So this is actually what we are. This is actually related to what we are going to find out at first place. So we want to explore more about this in the next phase. And also, in the second phase, we also find that the journalist is the most active speaker. So in phase 3, we collect the data basically from the journalist on the newspaper. So and our to find that what could be the possible reasons might cause Malaysian Chinese to leave their country, and also raise the public attention to the cultural diversity in Malaysia.
And then we take a look of our website. The reason why we use the newspapers graphic style is because most of our content are from the news and comments online. And in phase 3, our title is called Not Only One Malaysia. We have categorized into 3 parts. The first one is breaking news, the second one is comments, and the third one is discovering. We want to ask why the Malaysian Chinese are leaving Malaysia. The researchers from Oxford University found out that across ethnicities, most the Malaysian Chinese has the strongest desire to emigrate out of Malaysia. And then on the first page, we got to introduce about Malaysia. The Malaysia is kind of unique in our world, one of the unique country in the world. It consists of 3 major ethnicities: the Malay, the Chinese, and the Indian. They all have different religious belief, and they have different festivals and different languages. And what is One Malaysia? One Malaysia is kind of like a slogan which introduced by previous prime minister in Malaysia. The purpose of it is to promote ethnic harmony and national unity. And then come to the second part, and we start by using the Google and Baidu search engine. We have collected comments from several newspaper sources which give expressions to the reasons why the Malaysian Chinese are leaving the country. And then as you can see, there's a lot of comments from different news press. For instance, the BBC, data source from the BBC, it mentions the inequalities issues in Malaysia, or some others news press like Malaysia Kini also mentions inequality issues and religious issues in Malaysia. And from these comments, we have seen many repeated keywords like second-class citizens, Islamizations, equal quota system, birth rate, and unfairness. And the most mentions from these comments is about inequality issues. And then comes to the third part. We started discover these news and comments. We find out that some possible reasons that might cause the Malaysian Chinese move out of from Malaysia. The first one, like only 5% of Chinese and Indian with 30% of the total populations working in civil service. And the second one is about the education fund is distributed unevenly across ethnicity, and also the number of Tamils primary school, which means the Indian primary school, are decreasing from year to year. And the third one is about the local indigenous, the Malay, can be paid lesser than the non-indigenous, which means Chinese or the Indian. And also the Malay owns 30% of residential sector than the other ethnics. And the fourth one is actually Muslim, but you can that the belief of the Chinese and Indian are not really get into the Muslim religious. They are all separated. And then, as we know, movies can reflect reality. So we want to see some situations from Malaysia, in Malaysia from these movies. So we can show scenes from different movies. And then the conclusion is that the reason why they are leaving might be some other reasons, but what should be more concerned is more about the cultural diversity and the equality rights behind the phenomenon. We would love to see not only one Malaysia in cultural field rather than resource locations. And also from the project, we have seen the gap between various ethnicity groups in Malaysia, also saw the unique cultural diversity of the country. We call out for the cultural inclusion in diversity rather than treating differently. And this is the end of our presentations. Thank you.
So it seems we are done with the presentations. Such a long marathon, but I think you got, I'm sure you got a lot of ideas and thoughts. I think you did a very great job. So please join me in a big applause to everyone. If you go on Twitter in the account of Density Design, you'll find a link to all the projects. And so we can now move downstairs where we will open the exhibition on the info poetry, and there is also a screen where you can interact with all the websites. So thank you again for being, especially the students, of course, but all the others to stay so long here with us and join us for the opening of the exhibition. Thank you very much and see you soon.